So I guess we'll start with introducing yourself, when you started painting, and your crew if you want.
Start off, Snare.
All right, Snare. I first became aware of graffiti in like 1983, but I wouldn't really say I was a writer at that point. I was a little kid, like 9 years old. And then within a couple of years started to meet other people that did it and got more, serious about it. Back then, the first crew I was in was actually called CCC, which was Can Control Crew. And then I got put down with a crew called USC, which is Unlimited Styles Crew. And then from there went on to like WBB. Now I push DME, FDC, DTT, a lot of crews, FUKQ. Throughout the years I've gotten put down with a lot of crews and started a couple crews and stuff. So.
Hell yeah. Right, NOME. I started aware of graffiti in 85, 86 when I was still in Miami. And then unfortunately I lost my mom early, so I had to move to Broward. And then first crew I got put down with was FSB, 5 Silent Bombers, and that was around 89 is when I first started tagging around the neighborhood and stuff like that. And then eventually HS was formed in 92, and then we got down with GB, and that's how HS ACK came around. And now I push HS ACK, EMS from Jacksonville, and Concepticons from Canada.
I write FREEK. It probably started writing around 1988, 1987, 86. I don't remember exactly, to be honest. Like tagging around. I wasn't too aware of graffiti. I didn't notice till I started doing it, to be honest. And a couple of friends of mine, Res and Two Def, came from North Miami. And when I fell in love with it, because I fell in love with the rebellious of it, just going out and just doing whatever you wanted to, and nobody could tell you anything about it. And that's how I first started tagging. I write Damn Crew. I was in a couple other crews, MOA, Us Crew, NOW, TWA, and that's about it.
So I brought you guys together because I feel like, there's a lot of documentation today, but I don't feel like there's a lot of talk about the past, right? When graffiti started here in Miami, in Broward and Palm Beach, 3 counties, right? So I kind of wanted to get some OGs here and just kind of talk about the past, war stories, and kind of just go from there naturally. So, I don't know. I actually have no idea where to start. I kind of came here with a blank slate and just see how this goes. As I said, this is my first time doing this, and we'll just see. So I just kind of want to talk about, like when you guys started, you guys talked about your crews. So, I don't know if anyone's got any, start with some war stories, just to kind of warm up. If anyone's got some good ones.
Well, for us, Broward was more, especially going into like 91, 92, it was more gangs turning into writers. It started off writing and then they turned into gangs. Like you had TFF and TCB, which later on became X-Legion and TN7. And then they were, graffiti writers. They were going around bombing and everything like that. So that was, some of the blueprint for us as we were coming up, because these were guys that we looked up to. I always knew Frosty and all these guys that were, from over there in North Miami and stuff that were really OGs, Airborne, some of these guys we used to always hear of. But for us, it was more tag banging than anything, And that's basically how we started off, and then eventually, Graff took over. Thank God.
When you say tag banging, you mean, hey, this is my territory?
Yeah, it was more more of a gang mindset. You know,
Yeah.
it was about the art, but we were more bombing. You know, we really weren't piecing that much. You know, and then you know, as we started, the Mile of Fame changed everything for us when we really seen what was going on. And
The Wall of Fame?
the Wall of Fame, but we call it the Mile of Fame.
Was is that the wall in 95?
Yeah, that was when Snare got that legal. Yeah, he got all that popping, man. And there's a lot of regret what happened to that wall, man. You know, how it turned out. And that's probably one of the major regrets that I carry with me today is what transpired at that wall in a lot of different situations. You know, it used to be just nothing but burners, man. You know, it was really fucking dope. And then, unfortunately, it turned into a little bit of a war zone out there. You know. But yeah, there's a lot of regret from that. You know?
You say tag banging. When I hear that, I'm thinking LA
Yeah.
graffiti, you know, where they're like, hey, this is my territory. You see someone else, you cross them out.
Oh, yeah.
Not very talented style graffiti, just scrappy.
Well, I mean, HSHEK was really never known for a lot of style. We were just known for bombing, man. And, you know, if it wasn't for crossing paths with GB, there's no telling where I would be, you know, at this point in time in my life as far as Graff went, you know, because he really inspired us and showed us really what was possible out there if you really were dedicated to getting up, you know. R.I.P. by the way, I miss George. I don't know if Cinder wants to chime in on that, you know, as far as all that situation went down and.
No, definitely.
That wall?
That wall, we were painting there illegally earlier, like probably in the late 80s. I think the first time I ever went and painted that wall was probably like 89. I wouldn't be surprised if there was people painting it before that. There was probably stuff on that, because that wall was like clean concrete when I first found it. And clean concrete back then would just absorb paint. So like if something was done in the mid 80s there, by the time I got there in 88, 89, that stuff could have been faded so badly that you couldn't even see it. So I couldn't even speak for, like he said, like Frosty or like the Block Boys. Some of those guys may have been there before us, but when I came, I thought like that, you know, that was our wall. We were the first ones to hit it. And then, like he said, when GB came, as soon as I met GB, we just gravitated immediately. He put me down with a crew from New York called KSN. And it was me, him, this dude Zot that I went to high school with that was KSN as well. And like the three of us just pretty much like inseparable at that point. It was like high school. I want to say the beginning of high school was probably like 10th grade when he came from New York, because I think he came in like 1990. And so yeah, I brought GB to that wall. We did illegal stuff there. And then a few different times we went and painted there. But then I don't know why, but I got the idea like, man, I could approach these people. It was like the wall went around a mobile home park. And I was like, man, I wonder if I could approach these people and maybe they'll give us permission to paint the wall. It was like probably 89, 90 was when I first started realizing that a lot of guys in Miami were getting permission for these walls. I would see graffiti, but I really didn't understand. I don't think till the late 80s when I started to really understand what was going on. I met a dude that wrote Snare in 1988. He started a crew called WBB, and he was also down with VO5. Also, rest in peace of Snare. Snare passed away too. But so when I started to understand that, I'm like, oh man, I could try to get this thing legal. And Snare had just came back from LA. And when he was in LA, he saw the first Hexen Slick battle. I don't know if you guys are familiar with the second Hexen Slick battle that was on TV and all that. There was one before that, and he got flicks of all that stuff. He had flicks of stuff from LA that, like, when he came back from LA, we're like, what the fuck is this? Because there wasn't graffiti magazine. We had never even seen that stuff. And so I'm like, man, I'm gonna take these pictures because the shit is so dope. And I'm gonna go to these people, and it was like all Canadian people that lived in this place. So, but they had like a owners association that, like, you know, made the rules for the place. And I went and I put like a shirt and a tie, you know, and I don't, even to this day, I don't wear a shirt and tie for stuff, you know what I'm saying? But I like put a shirt and a tie, and I went with these pictures, and I had this little presentation. I stood in front of these people, like, I can't speak in front of a group, you know what I mean? Like, I was bright red, like, so sweating, you know, and like, I don't know how, but I convinced them to let us paint the wall.
That probably worked in your favor, being so nervous and like.
Yeah, so we got the wall legal, and my first probably even knowledge of NOME, really, because I knew about Turbo before that.
Yeah.
I knew of him because of Lake Forest.
Yeah, you guys live in the same area.
Lake Forest and Ives, we always had beef, you know, like that was like the county line, the county line wars, even before the graffiti wars.
Yep.
But so one of the first times that I remember hearing your name was that, like you said, we were doing all these burners and we were starting to get some nice shit on the wall. And I don't know why one night you and Turbo decided, like, we're gonna go and just do fucking Turbo and NOME silvers over this whole fucking wall. I mean, it just took out every, and it was like, there were some people that there was already animosity and stuff like that. But like at that time, there was people that you guys didn't even have problems with. That you were just like, we're gonna get our. I think later on, Justin told me that he had taken acid or something. And came up with this whole idea, like, yo, if we go over everybody, we'll be fucking famous. Everybody will know our names, you know. And I'm like, what a fucking dumb idea.
That was my bright idea.
But so yeah, so that was
acid
where,
or bombing?
Both.
that was where the first, I guess you could say, altercations that we had. We never really had. I don't think.
Well, if you remember,
personal with each other. Well, I remember the first
time was with Clear.
You
remember?
I remember.
Remember Justin fought Clear.
That's the first time,
and that was before.
I think that was before you guys dissed everything. So
yeah,
so that was the first time that I met you, because I remember you guys came, and yeah, I remember that him and Clear ended up fighting or whatever.
Shout out to Clear and Cirque.
Like, yeah, and Clear, bro, you were talking about TFF.
Yeah.
Like, TFF, when I was young, that was one of the first crews that I remember seeing up
Yep.
and being aware of. And then there was a girl in my neighborhood named.
Yeah.
You remember her, right?
Yep.
Okay. So I don't know if she went out with Sect, or I think they went out with Sect or something like that. So we would see stuff through her little brother. Rick would like have stuff, and we'd be like, oh shit, you know. Like one of the first things I ever saw was a Sketch character in pencil. And it was fucking phenomenal.
Sketch 2000.
With Kangol and a fucking design. It was probably like 85.
Yep.
And I remember seeing that character and be like, who the fuck is this? Oh, this guy's Sketch. So Sketch was always like a legend to us. Sketch was BBB, Brothers Back to Back crew. And then I found out later that Sketch actually was schooled from Airborne.
Yep.
When Airborne first came from New York, he met Sketch in school and started schooling him. And I never knew that history before, you know?
I never knew that until recently when I actually just got to chop it up with Seam. Or Arrive now.
Yeah.
My bad, bro. But yeah, he was telling me all about that with Airborne and Sketch, man. That blew my mind because I never knew that Airborne schooled Sketch.
Yeah.
You know? So
yeah, some of the war stories. And then even years later, me and Mike had talked about this before. There was the day that he was out of the wall and we had spotted him, and I was with some other dudes. And we're like, that's those guys, and we fucking chased them. And my boy started shooting at him. Yeah. And we found out later that we almost killed some guy that was in the car with him that we were actually cool with.
Holy shit.
Well, before that, man, all those guys had pulled a gauge on us the night before, like Envy and all them dudes, man. We were shooting at them. It turned really bad out there.
Yeah,
man.
stupidity.
Like,
just being young kids and fucking egos. And
a couple of situations turned the mindset into anybody going out there was possibly going to be beef, or there was going to be beef. So, like, even when I met Shy one time, he pulled a machete on me.
I was just gonna say, I used to always go home with a machete or a baseball.
Yeah, and we had the pistol in the car, and I was like, yo, bro, like, you know what I'm saying? Don't bring a knife to a gunfight, bro. Like, just chill. And he was cool, you know, really.
You were talking about Seam. The first time I met Seam was at that wall, and he was out there looking for somebody he had beef with, and he had a baseball bat.
Yeah.
And he came right up to me, and he goes, yo, what do you write? And I was like, I write Sin, bro. And he's like, I respect that. Because I was like a little skinny white kid, you know, and he had a baseball bat, and he's like, I respect that you told me what your tag is. And then he just kept walking, and I'm like, hold up, bro, what do you write? You know, and then he went looking for whoever he was looking for, didn't find him. He came back, he goes, yo, I'm seeing, da da da. I was like, oh shit, like that's one of like the dudes that I looked up to the most when I was young, you know? All the VO5 guys were on another level at that time.
Those dudes were way ahead of their time, man, especially Seam. You know, the stuff that he was doing at the bakehouse and all that stuff was just fucking ridiculous, man.
How was he ahead of his time?
Just with style and connections and shit, man. It was just...
I found out years later, which we didn't know at that time because nobody would tell their secrets. Nobody would tell you like, yeah, I found this tip that makes the camera spray this way. Yeah. Or I watched this fucking movie called Star Wars. Like I remember like people would covet subway art.
Yeah.
Like in my area, I don't even think I saw subway art until probably 85, 86. But then I found out later, like the dude who gave me my name, he used to write Zephyr. And then he gave me the name Sin or Sinister, you know? And I'm like, all these names came from subway art. But I didn't know that at the time because dudes wouldn't tell you like, oh, look at this book. Because they wanted to have that. So I think a lot of those dudes, certain dudes had access. And then Seam being from this area, you know, there's a story here in the museum that talks about Thurston Howell III. When he came from New York, he moved here to Wynwood and he was doing graffiti already. And Seam had met him really early on, you know? So I think they had access, like Sketch having access to Airborne, you know what I'm saying? Stuff like that we didn't have. So I was talking to Recal yesterday and we were talking about how like back then everything was trial and error and experimentation. Like you didn't have graffiti magazines to look at, you know, you didn't have like I said, dudes telling you, oh, if you get this cap off of this certain product and put it on your can, your lines are gonna come out cleaner. So it took some of us a long time of like experimentation and emulating what we saw other people here locally doing, whereas some other people had access. Like I heard stories that, I don't know if it was Vice, but I think one of the 7-Up guys had gone to New York in the 80s and got pictures of like subway trains and stuff. So I was wondering like, how does Deck and these guys like are so dope?
Yeah, man.
And it's, I'm not saying like they were biting or
They were
whatever.
just advanced.
I mean, we were all being influenced by what we were seeing, but I feel like having that access back then gave you like an edge. So it seemed like they had tips. I remember later on when I found out about like testers tips and stuff, and I would tell like Dash or see later like, oh bro, we had those in like 89.
Yeah.
And I didn't get access to those till like 91 when Snare came back from LA, because he came back and was like, oh, you got to get these testers tips. And I'm like,
So it was all stock tip.
before that
Stock
for
tip.
us.
And then for bombing, it was Bug and Tar and Marble.
But that was when GB came.
Yeah.
I learned about that from GB. So
Yeah,
that
we
was
didn't
already
know.
early 90s too.
Yeah.
And there was guys before that knew about that stuff, because I remember seeing stuff and being like, how the fuck did they do that?
There's flares
I
and
think
shit.
Demo and some of those guys had those caps early on. Because I remember them, that I was, later when I got a hold of them, like, oh, that's what these guys were using back then, you know? And GB was the one that put me on there from Marble, Magic, and Bug and Tar.
Yeah, man.
Yeah.
That was like a hot commodity when you went to Home Depot. Like you'd always go to the cans and try to see if the tips were in there. They're always gone. You'd be like, fuck, man.
Was Home Depot even around then?
No, it was a
Builder Square.
Builder Square, yeah.
Was there another hardware store? Oh,
Ace, right?
Yeah, well, yeah, the
Lizzie-
smaller ones.
Lizzie
but I'm talking-
Lumber.
there was a bigger one that was there was Builder Square, and there was one other big one. I can't remember the name
There
of
was a
it.
Lizzie Lumber.
There you go. Yeah,
Yeah,
Lindsay
so-
Lumber. Yeah.
Yeah.
I can only
Lizzie
imagine.
Lumber.
I can only imagine what Freak went through though, like because he started off way before us.
And in Miami,
figuring
the different-
things out.
What year did you start?
On 87, 88, around there. And
I think he started in 86, 87. We talked about this a lot because
Yeah,
I have
yeah.
a picture of a piece he did that was done in 87 for sure. And I think it was one of his first things, or maybe the first thing that he ever did. And we talked about this
which
before.
piece was that?
That NOW that I posted on Instagram.
Yeah, the NOW was 1988, I think. 80.
You sure, bro?
Yeah.
Because there's something on the wall written there that says 87.
But there was probably a couple other pieces
Something
in
that
the
was
little
written
area.
before you painted there, maybe.
But we didn't get serious until 1989 when we were riding
89
and
was a
bombing
big
around
year.
the neighborhood. But then when we got to high school, South Miami Senior High, like a lot of different people from different areas got together. And like Norm was saying about the gang banging, we made a graffiti crew, which was them, and then we made a gang, the Latin Syndicate. And
That syndicate was deep too.
with a couple people from, there was Hammer from New York, there was Rest, Two Def, me, and a couple other guys from different schools that went.
Wasn't there a guy Power too that was one of the early syndicate guys, or no?
No, Power I think was Latin King.
Okay.
And so we sometimes got like fake tags, like I did Oval and different things so that our things wouldn't get toyed, because we got a lot of we had a lot of beef with like IMP and other people from those areas.
I always loved the tag that you did back in the days, Foreplay.
Foreplay, I did that foreplay because of that too.
Such a dope tag.
Yeah, it is a dope tag.
And,
How do you spell it?
Four and then play.
Okay, that's fresh. Yeah, that's real fresh.
It was chilly. It was and then
It's funny that you had a tag Foreplay and then you became a freak.
yeah. But I think Freak was before. And
Then he learns some foreplay.
Foreplay turned you into a freak.
and it was just it was basically just fighting around everywhere. And but first thing that has really inspired me to like actual like letters and colors and all that was those TIA and Z. I went painting with them one time, a couple of times, and the way that they're going up on the rooftops, and there was a lot of pieces in top of the shopping centers.
Yeah.
That was like a big thing to go up there and do pieces at night, and we would
You talking about like how they had like a huge facade and you
Yeah.
go on the backside of it?
Yeah.
Okay.
Yeah, all those little walls, all the stuff up there. And TIA and those guys were big on that. Like, and then some of them you could see from like the Metro Rail, like Waterbed City. And that was one of the first places that I saw Icy and Scam from down south with like a nice big pieces. And there was also AIM doing a lot of stuff down in that area, which was
I think AIM was the first real all-city crew, because I remember being up our way and I saw AIM tags everywhere. When I first
Yeah.
started going to high school at NMB, And like
And-
going to junior high at JFK, 163rd Street, you would go from one end to the other, like from 95 all the way to the beach, and they'd have every freaking pole.
All
with
the
aim,
poles,
down aim.
going down aim tags everywhere.
Yeah.
And that was from my neighborhood, so it really was inspiring. And when we started our crew, we didn't want anybody to know who we were. So I remember people, hey, you seen those damn guys doing that? I said, no, we haven't seen none of that. Because we wanted to go first and bomb the crew before we put our names up. And but the fighting was always, it was part of it. I think it was like a natural thing for a lot of years. And wherever we saw it, we would just fight with everybody. That wasn't, we were like you were saying the story about seam. That was a big thing of going up to walls and looking for people. And what do you write? It's at another time, everybody, you could kind of tell who wrote or who was from that culture. Because the way they dressed, it stood out. Like
How'd they stand out?
the clothes, the bike shorts, the fisherman hats, fisherman suits.
MCM
Yeah,
hats.
and that's how you can point out the dudes that were into the gangster shit. Because the dudes that were into the gangster shit was like, fisherman hats, bike shorts, silver
With
shirts,
the white
wearing
shirts.
wearing beads, Converse decks,
With the old English letters on the side, sometimes with the tag,
with the teja.
with the
MCM
teja,
hats all crunched up.
yeah, the hats all punched up, yeah.
Yeah, very very distinguishable. Everybody looked the same. We
Yeah,
made
you
it
could
really
tell.
easy for the cops at the festivals to get all the gang members.
Yeah, it was very easy. The youth fair. When we go to the youth fair, it would they would get us every time, and they would take us to the little police station they had there. So after a while, we were like, dude, they're gonna get us, and they're gonna take us to the little police station. So I remember one
Field
day,
interrogation reports.
one day, we all got together. When we got to the youth fair, we just decided to go in there. So we're like, hey, we just wanted to let you guys know that we're here.
Yep. And that's how it was back then too. Like when you go to these events, you went out there deep.
Yeah,
Because
you had to
most
go
of the
deep.
time, man, like he said, it was gangs and Graff. You know what I mean? So while we were at HSACK, I was still ex-Legion. You know what I mean? And we were banging with Zulu and IMP and some of the Dade crews and shit like that. So that's just the way it was. And to jump off of him is. That's why when somebody still to this day asks me what I write, there's always a little bit of, yeah, nigga, this is NOME. You know what I'm saying? What's up? You know what I mean? Because that's how it was.
It was weird to me when later I started meeting writers and they didn't want to tell you what they wrote, or like you meet somebody and they say, hey, what's up, man? I'm Daryl. And
Yeah.
you're like, Daryl.
Yeah,
Like,
exactly.
Like, most of the people that knew me back then didn't know my name.
Exactly.
You know what I'm saying? Like they knew.
More people know
unless
me
we got close.
by NOME than my real name,
Yeah.
even growing up. Just because of how wild we were. I didn't want people to know my real name.
Yeah, I didn't even I wouldn't take pictures.
No.
I wish I had more pictures when I was young.
Me too, man.
I would,
Especially with George, man.
I didn't want to be in pictures because I knew somebody could be like, "Oh, that's the guy that did whatever." You know what I'm saying?
This guy rolled up on my
And
house.
I thought like that really young too. You know what I mean? Like at an age where most kids don't think like that. I was like, I remember my mom always being mad because I never wanted to be in pictures, and I'm like,
But it's also...
I thought you were
So you're
talking
gonna take
about,
pictures of your house?
when you said pictures, I thought you were like, I didn't take photos of my work.
early on, I didn't take photos of my work at all. I didn't even
You wouldn't
become-
even take family. Wouldn't even take family photos.
just anybody taking a picture of me.
Oh, shit.
Yeah, I didn't want pictures of me available because
Yeah.
I knew I was doing stuff that like somebody could identify me and go, "Oh, that's the guy that did this or that." You know.
And speaking of the beef and all that stuff back then, a lot of the guys that I had beef with and I fought are some of my closest friends to this day.
Yeah, definitely.
Because of
Definitely,
respect.
yeah,
And,
that's true.
me and Sinner, man, we had major beef back then, man.
you,
Now
guys,
there's just
you guys said you exchanged lead.
well, there's just so much water under the bridge now, man. You know what I mean? We're still here, and now we get to talk, man. We get to reminisce about all the wild shit.
I feel like as soon as GB passed, all that stuff was under,
That was it.
water under the bridge for
Well,
us. That's when
we also had a talk at his house.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? We squashed it, man. Like,
But I know, like once he passed, I always had a little bit of like animosity towards you guys, and part of it even had to do with when GB started hanging with you guys. 'Cause I was like, man, you know that I had problems with these dudes since we were, even like we were talking about Clear. Through GB, I ended up having beef with Clear, and I like looked up to like TFF. Like TFF to me was like, I can't wait to meet these guys.
Yeah.
So when I finally had the opportunity, or the first interaction with them, it was that GB picks me up and he goes, "Hey, these guys went over me," and we go driving around. and we were putting KSN up back then, right?
Yeah.
So they had gone over GB at the Snake Creek spot,
Yeah.
under the bridge right there,
Yep.
and they put Kids Slobbing Knobs, and that shit like hit my heart. And I was like, fucking Clear and Cirque went over my crew and fucking called us Kids Slobbing, and we gotta go back, you know? So back then they were pushing Headhunters.
Yeah.
So we started going over them and writing Head Givers.
Yeah.
So I remember the first time I met Clear and Cirque was like around the same time that Justin had fought him, and me and like Clear came up. And he's like, what do you write? And I'm like, I'm Sin. And he's like, oh, really? He's like, yo, I'm Clear. And I was like, oh, that's crazy. And I'm like, what's up? He's like, what's up? I'm like, I don't know. What do you do?
Yeah, exactly.
You want to just like fucking let it slide? And he's like, yeah, let's let it slide. And then I started telling him, like, yo, it's crazy because I don't even know where that started. And he goes, man, fucking GB went over us at this spot and then it's funny because GB would always come to me like, yo, these guys went over me. Mm-hmm. But then every time I talk to somebody later on,
he went over them.
Yeah.
And you know what's funny?
He came from New York with that cat mentality.
Well, you know what's funny is
bigger, better.
we had
more.
beef with GB in the very beginning.
Yeah, for sure.
From Snake Creek.
Bro, I was at County Line 7-Eleven and I had left. I don't think you were here that day, but GB and Zot were in 7-Eleven and Fabian, I think, Never.
Yep.
I forgot who else was with them that day, maybe Kidder, had confronted them because they hadn't heard from somebody that GB had a Volkswagen Bug.
Yeah.
So when they stepped to GB, they're like, yo, what do you write? And he's like, oh, I write with a pencil or a pen or whatever. And they're like, why are you acting stupid? And they go, what do you write? And he's like, well, I write when I'm in school. Like he knew, you know what I'm saying? So he was playing dumb. And I don't remember how, but they knew it was him. And they ended up like jumping inside the 7-Eleven.
Yeah.
And Zot tried to like grab someone and they get off, and one of them hit Zot in the head with a fucking quart bottle. Zot took off running. I think it ended up being that Zot beeped me. Like we had beepers back then.
Yeah.
It's like, yo, these guys just jumped me, da da da. So we went and picked him up, and then we found GB somehow later on, and I got in contact with Sect through Denise Woodall.
Right.
And I was like, hey man, we gotta fucking, and this was even before the wall was legal, County Line.
Yeah.
That was one of the first times we painted it illegally. I said, yo, you niggas gotta meet us at County Line Wall, we gotta fucking handle this, you know what I'm saying? And bro, we're like, you know, we didn't know what we were dealing with.
Yeah, it's TN7.
So it's me, GB, Zot, maybe this dude Tone that used to live right by County Line Wall that didn't hear right. It was like maybe 5 of us, bro. We went out there with baseball bats and machetes. And these guys showed up deep.
Yeah.
Deep, bro. And they were big dudes. I remember we walked up, it was like a movie. Like both groups walked up and it was nighttime.
Yeah.
And everybody stayed back and me and Fabian walked up to each other. And we were like, what's up,
Like
bro?
warriors.
Yeah, it was crazy. And I was spooked because I'm like, yo, these
He's a big dude back
yeah, these
then,
are
too.
12 dudes. Yeah. Sect was a big dude. You know, these dudes were older than us, or maybe the same age or
No,
older.
they're older than us.
Yeah.
Yeah.
And I just remember being like, damn, bro, we fucking. And then Sect was cool. Sect was like, yo, man, you know, we could fucking fight, we could fucking squash it, whatever you want to do. And it was crazy. The same night, we went to the end of County Line Wall and did these big throw-ups. And I remember that Never had GB on his shoulders.
Yeah.
GB was like sitting on his shoulders so he could paint high enough on the wall so you could see it from 95. It's like, yo, this dude, and I think Never was the one that tried to hit GB in the head with the court.
Yeah.
And ended up hitting Zot in the head with the court model.
Yeah.
And now he's got GB on his shoulders helping him do throw-ups, you know? So it was crazy how, like you said, like you would have these beefs, but then it would become like, and so I became cool with them at that time with TN7, but I don't think you were really cool with TN7 at that time because you were more like on the ex-Legion side.
Yep.
And which was crazy because, you know, I think it was Neil Fletcher, right? Chico that got killed.
Yeah. Unfortunately.
Yeah.
By
and that was
Richie.
that was like a TN7 Legion thing, you know?
But yeah, man. So that's basically how it was back then, man. It was just a lot of beef, you know, and you know, talking about all that now and seeing how it formed me as a writer. And I don't know if these guys feel the same way, but a lot of times I don't feel you're a real writer unless you had beef, because you really understand what it takes to be involved in all that and the dedication. And you know, I remember, man, we were out 4 or 5 times a week just bombing and crushing shit, and then you know they would come by, pick me up at 4 in the morning. I'd have a map where all these niggas shit was, and we just go out and get all their shit, and then get dropped off at work and do it all over the next day. You know what I mean? And those were just, that's just how it was back then. It was just, you know, I don't know if you know, writers now, definitely writers nowadays are a lot more dedicated. You know, you can see they're going up, they're getting up, but you know, when you don't really see that they have beef and they're bombing, I always think it's only a matter of time. You know what I mean? Because when you're bombing, beef comes.
Yeah.
You know, especially when you're really getting after it.
Yeah.
You know, I don't think a lot of people really understand that aspect of it all. You know.
Well, Freak, you said it earlier about basically that's just the culture back then, right?
Yeah, I think it's changed a little bit from how it used to be.
Yeah, it's
I would say a lot of it.
To how it is now.
'Cause-
I think we learned. I think it was more gang related.
Yeah.
And I think that's what caused a lot of the beef in the writing world was the gang relationship to a lot of the crews.
Yeah.
So like the gang mentality kind
Crossing over that mentality and bringing it into the graffiti world. Yeah.
That it slowed down graffiti.
Yes,
I think
it did.
in a sense it also
Creativity.
it hurt it like the big productions and big people doing big productions, because if your productions were getting toyed all the time, I'm pretty sure you didn't want to do
You don't want to waste the
waste
effort
all
and
the
the
pain
pain.
and all the things. So there was a couple of years that I think that it slowed down graffiti for a part.
Yeah, I would say from what, like 92 to maybe like 95, there was like a lull. And then like around 95, 96, 97 is when like MSG started doing all the big productions down here, really in Linwood and stuff.
When you say a lull, like as far as creativity,
Yeah,
or
there just wasn't
activity?
a bunch of like major productions.
There was a couple of lulls, like I said, like that, like downtime. Because
Yeah.
I remember when I first got back into it, around, we were just talking about this yesterday too. I was talking with Recall about the same thing. I was like, when there was less people involved, it appealed to me more. But as it became trendy and there was more people into it, I kind of shied away from it. Because to me, it was always like an outlaw thing. I remember in Star Wars, Scheme has that interview, and he says it. He says, "We don't, I don't care about those people. Those people are excluded." And that's how we felt. Like we only cared about writers. So it's like when it becomes, or at least me and the people that I came up around, when it becomes like acceptable. Like now, we were talking the other day. It's like somebody came by the wall, some lady, and was like, "Oh, you guys are doing a beautiful job." Blah, blah, blah. I'm like, she drove away, and I'm like, bro, 5 years ago, 10 years ago, on the side of the highway, I would have been painting that lady, would have called the cops on me. You know what I'm saying? So that's how I always looked at it, and it's like, but yeah. So going back to what you were saying, like those years, I remember definitely, and for me, it was a big lull in that time too, because that's when I graduated high school, started really getting into drugs and gangs more than, not really gangs per se, because there was a dude named Realm that was in WBB with me that got killed. I think it was like 90 or 91 that he got killed, and it wasn't really, I guess it was kind of gang associated, but it was gang members that jumped him and he ended up getting killed or whatever. So when that happened, I was like, man, at that time I was hanging out with dudes. I don't even think I was ever really in a gang except for like little small gangs in my neighborhood. But I knew dudes that were like Wilo and Disciples and stuff that we would hang out with and kind of try to emulate or whatever. But then once that happened with him, and then even the thing with Chico, like I was like, man, this is stupid. Like dudes are just getting killed over nothing. Like, and it was really, some of the times it was literally nothing. Like guys that didn't even have problems with each other. Like when Realm got killed, the dudes that fucked him up, I don't even think they knew him. He basically was there at a high school trying to holler at some girl or something, and I think the girl had said something to him that he was like, "Fuck you, bitch," and like, the story I heard later was that he spit on her, but I don't even know if that was the case, and I think she knew or was like a girlfriend of one of the dudes that ended up jumping him. And it was crazy because like Freek's cool with those guys. I don't know if he was there for that.
I wasn't there that day because I had skipped school.
But a lot of us were friends at that time. Like it was crazy because people that were on that side, that was like Syndicate, and then like my boy Realm he wasn't a gang member, but he was from the beach, so he knew a lot of dudes from the beach, and a lot of those people knew each other. So like if it had been as simple as like, hey man, I'm fucking Realm, WBB, I'm cool with this guy, and they would be like, oh shit, your homeboys, because that's happened to me before too. Like I was telling somebody the other day, the first time I met Zane, I was in Hialeah Pennant, and I know he says to this day that he wasn't, but I know he was plotting on robbing me for my paint. And then when he first asked me what I wrote, I was like, yo, I'm Sinner. And he's like, oh, cool, what crew are you in? I'm like, oh, I push BSK, TVC, whatever. He's like, oh, so you know Oil and KV? And I'm like, yeah. And then he walked over to me and shook my hand, and we were cool. But before that, he was standing like 20 feet behind me, looking in my fucking paint bag. And I'm like, this guy, I was like, who the fuck is this guy? So I think a lot of times, like, that was a big part of it too, like just not communicating and wanting to be tough. Like go into situations, who the fuck are you guys? And we don't know each other, but in reality, we're like the same type of people. We like the same type of things, and we fucking just fight over nothing. So I luckily for me, that hit me early on when Realm died. I was probably, I don't know, fucking 17 years old, 16 years old, and I was like, man, fuck that gang shit. So after that, I never wanted to be in a gang. I still, of course, associated with people that were in gangs and stuff and was around it. But I feel like what Freek said, I think that was a big, just black eye on the game. You know what I'm saying? That so many people got caught up in that for so long. And then it seems like like I remember when the movie Colors came out, you know, and that was when I was still infatuated with like wanting to be a gangster, you know.
That set everything off.
Oh man, in South Florida, after that movie came out, is when I just remember, Freak was talking about the youth fair, but for us in Broward, it was Six Flags Atlantis.
Yeah.
It was a water park, and Power 96 would throw jams on the weekend. And man, that place was rugged, bro. Like I
They had
saw
to shut
stuff
it
there
down because of all that.
that was brutal.
Yeah, it was a lot of fun.
At the same time, that also
But you also had
graffiti.
day crews coming to Six Flags
Oh,
too.
for sure.
You know, you had a lot of.
I met LBB out there. One night we were there, and we were a very small group, and we had our little like Playboy bunny hats with the like name of our whatever. I think our gang back then was called FU, which was Forever United, which later on became FUKQ,
Okay.
the graffiti crew. But so we had our little hats on. There was like maybe 5 of us, and we didn't even know. I didn't know about colors. I think maybe Nitro did.
Yeah.
I think our hats were like red and black for whatever reason. And so if I'm not mistaken, I think some LBB dudes came up to us because of that. And they were like, "Oh, y'all boys," and Nitro knew more, so he like talked to them, and we ended up hanging out the whole night with these LBB, which was Latin Bad Boys.
Yeah.
And like I said, they were from Miami. We had no clue, but we clicked up with them. So we're like, all right, now we're a bigger group. You know, something happens. And that night actually was chill. Nothing went down or whatever. But yeah, it was crazy.
It was definitely survival of the fittest back then.
But also graffiti, kind of, at least for me, it took me out of the gangs.
Yeah.
Well, that's what happened once Round got killed. I got really
into graffiti.
Yeah, committed.
And I started painting more and doing more pieces and doing more productions. And with the same guys from the crew,
It pulled us out of the gang shit for sure.
we started doing more damn crew productions and more getting, like you said, legal walls. We got a lot of walls here in Wynwood and through, Northwest area. And it kind of separated us from the gang. I was not hanging as much with the gang and hanging out more with the crew. And so I remember one time that even had people I had beef with. And I said, "Bo, it's like Swan from IMP."
Yeah.
And we had a conversation one time on the phone. "Hey, fuck you, this and that." I said, "Look, I don't know you, you don't know me." And he tells me, he goes, "Well, you just outworded me." He goes, "But if we ever leave this gang shit, gang shit, we're gonna go hang." And the day I left the gangs, like a couple of days later, I forgot about all the conversation. I get a phone call. He goes, "Hey, I heard you're not with the gang shit no more." I said, "No." He goes, "I'm gonna give you my address, come pick me up, we're gonna hang." I said, I know where you live. I said, "I know where you live." They go, "You do it?" "Yeah, that's your mom's house. We're not gonna fuck with your mom's house." I said, "I'll go by there." And we ended up hanging out the whole day, smoking, chilling. And from that day on, I just started painting a lot, and as much, the gang still continued. And it got even crazier than it was before, but I really just wasn't part of it anymore. And then neither was Resin too different. We were just doing a lot of painting, and then we got more people in the crew, and we started organizing more and doing more productions. We got people, backgrounds, and did a lot of legal walls, because we figured if we want to do something nice that takes a long time, it's a lot harder to do it illegally. I mean, it's gonna be done, because I painted with Mex, and we did a lot of stuff illegally at night, it's just a different thing, because there's nothing, you could do illegal all you want, but if you do a illegal production and you come back the next day in the morning and you drive by to check it out, you can't even sleep until you go by and take a look at it, because you gotta go by and take a look at it. You gotta, take that picture early in the morning just in case. And those are feelings that you can't get from a legal wall. But the legal walls, you go and do, and then you go home, and then you come back the next day, and you come back again, and you put a lot of little details that you don't put on an illegal wall.
There'd be nothing better, man, than taking that ride, especially like after a night of all bombing and everything, and like you wake up the next day, and you're driving, and you just see all the destruction, and just everybody's all hype, and yelling and screaming and dabbing and stuff, man. I can imagine what it's like to do an illegal production. I've done some illegal productions on track sides in different states, but nothing to caliber that these guys were doing.
What's crazy to me, something I've talked about before, and I thought about those illegal productions. Like, I don't know how to explain it, but it's crazy how much they shape you as a person.
Yeah.
Because you have to overcome so much adversity sometimes in those situations. It's planning. So it's like when I got clean and I got off drugs in '99, I started doing like you're talking about, like going out and planning like an illegal shit. We're gonna climb on this rooftop. We're gonna, you know,
Where you
this is the
park.
theme of the production, the colors, and then like things happen where there's like a dog in a place where you thought you were gonna be able to climb up, and now you got to overcome that. So it's like that started to shape me as a man again, because like I had, through my drug addiction and through just, you know, the way I was living, I had not even forgotten, I think I never even really knew how to like achieve a goal. You know what I'm saying? Like I talk to my kids all the time with my wife about like, I like communicating with my kids and being really open with them, because when we were young, our parents didn't tell us anything. We said, oh, why are we struggling with these bills? Oh, that's not your problem. Don't worry about it. You know, like my dad never talked to me about sex. My dad never talked to me about drugs. My dad never talked to me about anything. So I learned by doing, and I learned from the wrong people. So then, like I said, when I got clean, graffiti became my addiction. I mean, like, the reason I went so hard is because I was like, you know what, I don't want to do drugs anymore. I love doing this. This is a quote unquote healthy addiction. Even though I'm fucking almost dying and going to jail and all types of shit. But so through doing that, like, it really made me able to like follow something, you know what I'm saying? Like do something, started and be like, I'm gonna finish this. You know what I mean? You remember too, we would do illegal productions and sometimes something would happen at night, we'd have to leave.
Yep.
And we'd be like, fuck, now we gotta come back tomorrow.
And you were worried about coming back.
Yeah, you turn to the scene of the crime and still be like, fuck it, we're gonna finish this, you know what I mean? And yeah, bro, like I think, you know, it makes men out of us. You know, a lot of they have this saying now, graffiti saved my life. And I was talking to this dude remote the other day and he was saying it and I said, man, it's crazy because
I think in part, yes, I think it does, because who knows, if we wouldn't have been to doing graffiti, we would have still been with the gangs and we could have been dead, drugs.
I mean, that was one hell of a run, 99, 2000, 2001, 2002, when you were really traveling and then whenever you were here, you know, I mean, that was a hell of a fucking run, Center.
Thank you, bro.
Man, I mean, that was something to be heard of, man.
I remember taking a photo
Cool
of,
to see it, you know, the fucking water tower, you know, all that shit, bro. That shit was fucking sick.
that retaining wall you did on right off of 95 and 826. You actually did two of them over there, right?
I remember what you're talking about,
Yeah.
Dude, that blew my mind.
Yeah, I mean, he was doing burners and shit.
Yeah, those were,
I mean, that was a
illegal.
burner.
Yeah.
We're talking like
Yeah, he was doing
a
burners.
story and a half tall and what, 20, 30 yards long, some shit like that. It was nuts, man. And it was like full color, pink, greens, blues, I think. And just, how you used the roller for the fills, all that shit, man, blew my mind, you know, because I don't remember what year that was, but that was early in my career, you know.
And it was
early
these two a lot
2000s.
together too. There was a lot
Yeah.
of Center and Freak shit going on too, man.
Well, at the same time,
Yeah.
like when I got back into it, like I was saying, the early 2000s to me was like a lull again, where there wasn't a lot of new writers coming in. It wasn't like popular at that time. There was guys that like Freak and Mex were definitely going hard at the time.
Yep.
These guys were going hard on freights and still bombing and stuff. The STVs were crushing it at that time.
Yeah.
But there was a small group of us, like everybody knew who everybody else was. It's not like now where you have like, you go out and you're like, who the fuck is this? But I liked it at that time, and then it was competitive, but it was like healthy competitive at that time. I don't remember much beef at that time. I know there was little things that were going on, but it wasn't beef to the point where dudes were like fucking, you know, like the shit from the late 80s and early 90s. But I felt like it was really productive at that time, and I was just I've always been trying to emulate somebody else, you know, like I know in hip hop culture and period, like biting is always all about biting, but in reality, like if you weren't learning,
I was gonna say it feels unavoidable.
So, I even sometimes, like we did a tribute, we did a rooftop off the Metro Rail, and we did a piece that said "Born to Burn," but it was like a tribute to an old 7-Up rooftop.
Because that was a good rooftop. That was
and I've always felt like that, like I want it to be known, like these are the people that fucking, you know what I'm saying, like, and that's one of the things that I think, like he was, NOME was talking about GB not getting the credit he deserves. I remember I would read interviews with Chrome, and he wouldn't really mention GB that much, and I'm like,
and he put them on.
You have this platform, you know what I'm saying? I mean, they would put him up on the wall and put rest in peace and stuff, but like the influence he had on a lot of us when he came from New York was just, it was undeniable, you know? Even people that had beef with him, when we first met Chrome, one of the first times I ever met Chrome was through GB, and we would take him out. I mean, like he learned his whole, what he did at the beginning was emulating what he saw GB doing 100%. And Oil told me years later that what Oil did in the beginning when he would go to Highly Pennant and do the high up throwies and shit like that, and he was more into tags and throwy, wasn't it? He's like, that was GB, you know, like even Oil would do the little like splashes coming off the side of his throw up, which he's like, the first time I saw that was GB. But I feel like a lot of the dudes now don't, they don't go out of their way. Like once you have this like platform or this, you know, access to like tell people history, that's why it's dope that you're doing this, because like I've always felt like that's the most important thing, is upholding that tradition and like
And history.
passing on that knowledge to the younger. Like I meet younger writers and the first thing they ask me, oh, who started DME or who started, you know, and I love when dudes come at me like that. Most of the guys that I've ended up putting down with crews later are like guys like that. Like if you came around and we were talking about with the FTCs the other day, like you get private messages now on Instagram from somebody you don't even know. And they're like, hey, how do I get down with FTC? And you're like, send me your credit report and
Resume.
your resume. It's like, come on, bro. But like, that's, the world's different now, you know what I mean?
Yeah,
but so yeah, to me, like preserving that history is super important.
Yeah. You know, I've always never really been a fan of like internet crews, or like you got these guys pushing these badass crews, but like 3/4 of them don't even know each other.
Right.
You know what I mean? They're just put down because of style and all this other stuff. And I remember when the homie Say approached me about being down with Concepticons. I was like, man, I really don't know these fools. But he was like, oh man, you know 167, rest in peace. A couple dudes from Jacksonville and this, that, and the other. And I was like, yeah, man, but I don't really know these guys. And I was like, man, you're Canadian, bro. So I'll give it a little bit of a pass. And I've known you for 20 plus years.
Yeah.
So that would probably be the only reason why I trust pushing this crew. And it was one of the better decisions I've ever made. But, you know, I was always so against that. And then I got put down in one, and I was like, oh, and then when I went out to Canada, I got to meet most of them and stuff. And, you know, it's been a fun ride so far.
Yeah.
But that's where graffiti is going now. You know, just like what Snare said, like you just got guys getting put down because of their art. They don't know who this individual is personally.
Right.
You know, what I tell people all the time when I put them down with HS, first of all, there's a little bit of a prospect situation where they're going out and they're painting with us and everything, and they're vibing with us, and you see if they're really built for what HS is bringing to the table. And then, you know, we go through the whole process, you know, and you know, I wish a lot more of the crews would do that. You know, and there still are crews that do that, you know what I mean? But it just seems like it's really easy to get put down with a crew a lot of the times these days because of social media and the access that everybody has towards each other, you know what I'm saying? So I don't know if that's hurting the game or what the situation is.
I think it's just evolved, because you mentioned earlier pennant and your paint being taken, possibly. And when I
that
interviewed,
happened a lot out
well,
there.
I interviewed
Keds?
Keds, thank you. I interviewed Keds a couple of years ago, and he opened my eyes to that. And it kind of blew my mind, because he's like, man, it wasn't like today where everyone's friends with everyone. He's like, everyone had beef. And I was like, everyone had beef? He goes, oh yeah. He goes, you go down to the pennant and go get robbed.
Every night
and get your
pennant,
paint took. Like, I happen all the time. And I was just, that kind of imploded my mind of, I don't want to say how rough it was, but it just wasn't a friendly world back then, you know?
No.
Yeah, you had to hold your own.
Yeah.
Back then, basically.
Yeah.
And as far as like the internet and stuff, the internet back then were the people that collected pictures, and you always wanted to go to that person's house. In our neighborhood was Seal. Seal was the one who had all the pictures and had all. So we wanted to go and take a look at the black books, look at the fucking pictures, and see everything, because you would really go out of your way to go see a piece. So it wouldn't be like you did a piece and it just got posted, and so you heard, like for example, Sinner did a piece over here, but you knew more or less where it was, but you didn't know exactly where it was. So you had to go to the neighborhood and take a look around. In the process of taking a look around for a piece, you might get into beef, you might end up fighting. Sometimes not even writers, other gangs from that neighborhood that they get, well, this is our turf, what are you doing here? But I like to give credit to Seal, because Seal inspired a lot of people back in those areas in Southwest for the graffiti. A lot of people then that became and did their own crews after came through Seal.
Right.
And the collection of art, and he was really dedicated. Before his accident, he was one of the most dedicated writers, although he wasn't a big piecer, but he's a real dedicated bomber. A lot of all the writing, probably all those aims, tags going down, all that stuff was probably Seal, a lot of them.
Yeah. I think Seal and Snare both were early guys that had that mentality of like, we want to bring people together. Like most of the time, like you said, there was that separation or that, And even though both of those guys kind of came up through that gang stuff, I don't know exactly what clicked in their minds, but I remember Snare being like a big unite. Like when I got put down with WB, like before that, any crew I was in, it was always guys from a certain neighborhood.
Yeah.
There wasn't, you weren't in a crew, there was guys from another neighborhood that were in that crew. And when I got put down with WB, I remember Mo telling me, "Oh, bro, let's go to Kendall." And I'm like, "Kendall?" That, like to us, that was another fucking world.
Yeah.
You know what I'm saying? Like,
Way down there.
I wasn't even in Broward yet. I was in North Dade, and like to go to Kendall was just
North Cuba.
it just seemed like forever, And I remember him being like, "Oh, we're gonna go hang out with these dudes in Kendall." And so there was like dudes that were down from Miami Beach, which was like where WB started, and like Snare was in North Miami. I was way up in North Dade, like almost at the county line. And then you had these guys in Kendall that were put down, or like the Doral area, you know what I mean? So that was the first time that I really knew of and then now that I have more knowledge, I know that earlier on VO5 was like that. They were recruiting guys that were from other areas as well. But like Seam in particular, I know at that time wasn't super, like he didn't have that mentality like Seal and Snare wanted to bring people together. He was more, it was more gang affiliated and beef and, those guys just, Seal for sure. I remember when I first met Seal being like, this dude's just different. Like he just thinks different. I remember like when the whole STV thing started, it was like a writers union. So there was all these guys that were in different crews that hung out and were cool with each other. And every once in a while, like if I was in WBB, I'd be like, "Oh, well, I'm hanging out with this dude, so we'll put up WB and AIM." Or like AIM would be hanging out with FA or RA. And they'd be like, "Oh." So he's like, "Oh, instead of us having to put each other's crews up, let's put up this STV thing," which actually, this dude DS came from New York that was down with the crew from Brooklyn, which was STV. And he was the one that I guess Seal became cool with, and he gave Seal the authority to like, "Yo, you can push STV in Miami." But Seal took it to another level with this whole like writers union thing. So like if you were in WBB, FA, AIM, RA, I think Bomb Crew later, some of the Bomb Crew guys got down, then you were in STV automatically, and it was like a union.
Yeah, that's cool. I never knew that.
So I pushed STV when it first started, and then that was around the time when Realm died, and I don't know if that had something to do with it too, because I remember when STV first started, it was specialized to vandalize,
Yeah.
but then I remember Seal also pushing to stop the violence.
Stop the violence is what I remember.
And so and I think that probably had an association with Realm and some of the stuff that was happening at that time as well. That was really cool. That was like, Seal definitely, and like I said, Snare as well, were two of the guys that I know were on that. Like, this, we all do graffiti. We all fucking like the same shit. You know what I mean? Like, why are we beefing?
As far as bombing, man, like STV, Weave and Twice and these guys.
They took that crew and made it something that we never did. Like, I mean, we were just catching tags.
Those
And
guys
like I
are
said,
fucking monsters, man.
Yeah.
Especially Twice, man. Jesus Christ. You know what I mean? Still, you know what I mean? I love seeing his shit now, man. Him back out there. He was gone for a little bit, but that dude, those guys, man. Those guys were like the first like all city dudes that were just Broward, Dade.
can you guys hear me?